Good evening and welcome. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor. Welcome to tonight's February 23rd, 2022. We missed Tuesday by a day, meeting of the Brighton Town Board. I want to welcome everyone that is here. We will begin the open forum portion of our meeting shortly. That's the opportunity for members of the public to share their comments with the town board. If you're watching us on YouTube or on our cable access channel, you'll have to log into Zoom in order to access the open forum, but there are detailed instructions for doing that on the Town of Brighton webpage at www.townofbrighton.org. Now, in a minute, we are going to have a presentation to the community, of the Brighton Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory, the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Action Plan, which we'll be presenting to the committee, to the community tonight. If you have comments on the draft idea plan, and we know people won't have seen it, and there will be a community meeting that will be scheduled in the not too distant future for more thorough comments on the plan. But I would ask that you do so during the open forum. Now, on the other hand, if you are here to comment on either of the two public hearings being held tonight, the temporary noise law amendment related to RG&E construction work along Winton Road, or the removal of several trees in the town highway right-of-way. If you want your comments to be included in the record of those hearings, I would ask that you wait until those hearings are called and are open. As always, we are making this board meeting accessible to our deaf and hard of hearing community with our ASL interpreters, Allie and Heather. And I believe we have an ASL student here tonight, Claire, also. So thank you all for your work. Just as a reminder, the agenda for tonight's meeting, as well as all the materials we're looking at in making decisions tonight, all are available on the Town of Brighton webpage. And again, that's www.townofbrighton.org. We'll start the meeting with the pledge. For those of you that are able to rise, please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, as I mentioned, the first thing we're going to have tonight is the Brighton Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. I'm hearing someone coming. Is that my echo? No, if everybody would please mute. Thank you. The Brighton Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board, also known as the IDEA Board, will be presenting its draft Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Action Plan, the IDEA Plan, to the town board and to the community tonight. I want to thank each of the members of the IDEA Board, many of whom are here with us this evening. The board is led by co-chairs Sarah Johnstone and Dr. Rashid Muhammad. And I also want to acknowledge our consultants in this work, the team from Gwen Inc., led by Gwen Weber McLeod. Tonight, the IDEA Board presents its draft IDEA plan to the community and to the town board for the first time. Now, the board won't be taking any action on the plan tonight. Instead, we hope that all of you will listen thoughtfully to the plan, to the presentation as it's presented. It will be up on our webpage, and you'll have an opportunity to share comments at a community meeting that the Idea Board will be announcing very soon. Now, like the town's comprehensive plan, the Idea Plan is intended to serve as a roadmap for the community, but just as importantly, it's intended to advise and guide town officials and town staff with tangible goals and specific strategies for meeting those DEI goals. Today, even before the draft plan is being presented to the community, we are taking guidance from the Idea Board and from other sources to begin to act on recommendations made in the draft Idea Plan. First, and perhaps most importantly, we've just received approval from the Monroe County Civil Service Board to hire a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer for the town who will report directly to the town supervisor. We'll be the first town in Monroe County, probably the first town in all of upstate New York to have a DEI officer, although such positions are common in the private sector and the education world. Hiring a DEI officer is a core recommendation in the draft Idea Plan. Last year, we established the Civilian Police Hiring Board, which now interviews candidates for new police officer positions with the Brighton Police Department, and then reports their recommendations back to departmental leadership. Idea Board co-chair Dr. Rashid Muhammad and town board member Christine Corrado are both members of this police hiring board. Our Sustainability Oversight Committee is already working with the Idea Board to ensure that Brighton's climate action plan will incorporate issues of equity as we work to make Brighton a more sustainable community. We're just beginning, but this Idea Plan will be a roadmap to assist us in doing much more. The town board will adopt the Idea Plan after receiving and considering your input, not just for the sake of adopting a plan, but to have a framework with specific goal recommendations that we can implement over time to make Brighton the community that reflects our aspirations when it comes to equity and inclusion for all of our residents today and for years to come. I'm pleased tonight to introduce Felicia Garcia. Well, Felicia can't be with us tonight. Felicia Garcia Hartstein, who is the first chair of the Idea Board. Our current co-chairs, Sarah Johnstone and Dr. Rashid Muhammad. And as I mentioned before, Gwen Weber McLeod, president of Gwen Inc., our consultant for this project. And Gwen, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Melee, and greetings to the members of the Idea Board that are present with us this evening. And also, I bring greetings from my company to the community members from the town of Brighton who are here to participate in this meeting. And as part of that, we'll hear our plan. I want to start by saying that it was my company's greatest honor to be engaged to do this work in partnership with a group of about 20 residents from your community to engage in a very specific charge. We were charged with, as the consultants, in supporting the Idea Advisory Board and developing a strategic framework document that would have a set of recommendations, goals, and high-level strategies that could be used by the town of Brighton as the town, in partnership with the community, are making decisions about how you as an entity could manifest an ongoing commitment to the ideas and concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This was not an easy process. It involved 20 people with diverse points of view. It unfolded over a 2-year period during some of the most challenging times we faced as citizens, not only of our respective communities, but of our country. It also involved getting input, feedback early on from about 100 other people from your community through the form of world cafes, focus groups, individual conversations. Because as your brothers and sisters from your community were doing this work, they wanted to know, what other residents were thinking about. And after that, they broke into a group of small work groups to then take on the process of starting to identify where your community could begin in doing this important work. I'd like to offer for your consideration how unique the town of Brighton is in taking on a project of this nature. As part of us beginning our work, we are thinking that what we wanted to do was find out what other communities in the country even had DEI plans. And interestingly enough to us, in our work, we only discovered about 2 or 3 other communities that had taken the step of developing a plan of this nature to guide their own decision making about how they would manifest commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of their work. When I looked at this, one of the things we wanted to consider as your consultants is, well, what would motivate the town of Brighton to do such a thing? And as we explored that with Supervisor Melee, the steering committee, and members of this committee, 3 things that we noticed in other of our clients came to the fruition. People do this work because it's the right thing to do. And a lot of people say it's the right thing to do from a moral, social perspective. But there's also reasons that it's the right thing to do, because the more government entities seek funding, those funding streams are seeking to make sure that people have fair, equitable access to the services provided by those entities. For some of our clients, it's about the bottom line. And that is also a very appropriate reason for a community to engage in DEI work. As I mentioned, funding comes forward. Companies that are looking to do business with the town of Brighton, or even maybe bring businesses to your community, are also looking to see how the community has the capacity to hold its own diverse workforce. And another reason that I think manifested itself throughout this project was that there's this belief in our clients that none of us is smarter than all of us. Our clients believe that the more they engage the diverse points of view and experiences of people who live in their community, the better skilled they'll become at having policies, practices, events, celebrations, and all kinds of other supports in their community that make sure that the community is large enough to hold all of its residents in all of your glorious diversity. My company specializes in DEI strategy development, and our 2-year experience with you has been amazing, wonderful, and as I mentioned, very unique in that you don't have other communities that are doing what you do. And one of our hopes for you is that as you begin to use this plan in service to your community, that you take pride that you are on the leading edge of communities that see formalizing a plan to guide the decision makings of your town as a real valuable resource. I'm going to introduce to you your co-chairs, Sarah Johnstone and Dr. Rashid Mohammed, to actually present some highlights from our plan in the amount of time we have allotted. However, prior to doing that, I'd like to share a slide that pays tribute to the other individuals who engaged in this 2-year process, just to say thank you and how proud we are that they committed their time. So as I mentioned, the idea of advisory board broke itself into 3 task groups to do the work. And across these groups are all of the individuals who participated in this process. And through the joy and challenge of it all, most of them chose to hang in there. And the prevailing reason why is that there was a common ground commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion as a resource to building a better community for all of you who live in the town of Brighton. Supervisor Melee mentioned that Felicia Garcia Hartstein was one of the original co-chairs, and we want to thank Felicia for leading this project through the first year. And now I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Johnstone and Dr. Rashid Mohammed, who are your co-chairs and who have helped us finalize the project. Sarah and Rashid.
Good evening, fellow neighbors, residents, community members of the town of Brighton. Good evening, Supervisor Mealy, Town Board, Chief Cathaldi, department heads, and others participating in this meeting. As Supervisor Mealy has pointed out, and as our colleague Gwen Weber-McLeod has pointed out, that we have engaged in a rather lengthy and robust process to lay a baseline to start a conversation, to develop a point of departure, to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in the activities of the town of Brighton and across the broader community. The process that we've undergone for the last 2.5 years has included a very, very diverse set of backgrounds, experiences, and opinions and insights brought to the table. It's had a lot of robust discussion and also integrated different sets of points. And again, it is not something that is the end or a deliverable that stops. It is the beginning of a conversation. So at a time when we are facing a great deal of rancor and animus in our national conversation, where we see these things even resident in our state and local communities, we believe that this plan and the subsequent inputs and conversations and the adaptation in the town of Brighton's planning and execution processes will be nothing but a positive and good thing. As my co-chair and I, Sarah, overview the plan tonight, again, I would offer to all of you to please look at this again as a way of formulating some very broad thoughts, taking some best practices, as Gwen has mentioned, putting them into place. And once again, Brighton is not only leading Monroe County and the state of New York in the way of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we're also leading the nation because very few communities have made this investment to go that far. At this point, I would like to turn it over to my co-chair, Sarah Johnston.
Thank you, Rashid, and thank you, Supervisor Maley, everyone for inviting us here this evening. I'm very excited to be here. There's been an awful lot of work over the last 2.5 years, and this is really the fruition of that work. I do want to point out that this is a living plan. Brighton chartered a course, and through that course, we've created this fluid document. And as you look at the document in more detail in the coming weeks, please be aware that this document also reflects a lot of what Brighton is already doing. There's so much going on in this community to be proud of and to build on, that our hope is that this plan can be used going forward to help the town in the many ways, some of which we are not even aware of yet, on how we can move forward collectively in a wonderful way. At this point, we're going to highlight just a few pages of our document. We do not have the time to go through all 20-odd pages. So when you see the document, this will be the opening page. This beautiful young lady has graced our cover. This again is a draft document. It is our final draft. However, it is not the final word. That is going to be written as we move forward.
Yes, you can go to page 13, please.
Our process over the last 2.5 years, our initial process included, as Gwen mentioned and Rashid, engagement outside of our IDEA board members. We had World Cafe events, which of course had to move to a Zoom format before we all really knew how Zoom worked. Now we're all pros. We had over 100 community members participate through Zoom and smaller meetings. There were a few in-person meetings that some of our members had with teens, with their neighbor groups, and also we met with Supervisor Maley and his department leaders to get their initial thoughts on our work. This is an inclusive document. There are so many voices from a broad array of people reflected in this plan. It's a guiding document that Brighton will use moving forward with input from staff, town governance, business owners, students, and residents. Through these meetings that we had with the community, it became obvious to us on the committee that there were 6 key areas, and we'll get into those very briefly in a moment. If you could just go back back to that original slide. Each of the 6 areas had 3 elements: a focus statement, goals that were describing our desired results, and the strategies for how to achieve those goals. So now moving to page 14.
As Sarah mentioned, thank you, Sarah, there are 6 overall areas of the plan which the committees and subcommittees took a look at, provided some very robust feedback, which was distilled in this plan. It is also, I want to mention at this point, as Brighton moves forward, as Bill mentioned, having a diversity, equity, inclusion officer, we plan to share that substantive input with that person to help also inform their work. But as to the 6 areas, number 1 is communication, and we're looking specifically at helping the town of Brighton see how it promotes diverse experiences and also shares ideas and celebrates our diversity. Number 2, engagements, partnerships, and inclusion. Again, this is facilitating communication across the community. These can be things that are positive and sharing information. They can also engage in some of our tougher discussions, but the town of Brighton will be a prime player in ensuring communication is shared, best practices, ideas from other places, and also our community conversations that we want to engage in with each other. Policies and practices, the town of Brighton will reflect the needs of our diverse community. I'll come back to this just for a quick second to give a little bit more detail in that area, because it is usually a place where we want to answer some questions and people have an interest in. Economics. As we know, there is a diverse set of economics and businesses economically and historically. We're at an inflection point. We believe that the way work is done, the way work opportunities are shaped will become more diverse going into the future. And Brighton as a community, both philosophically and in the way it's operated, is well poised to adapt and have some of those different types of things thrive in our community. Public safety. As Bill mentioned, myself and town board member Corrado and others in the community are involved with the Brighton Police Department in terms of their hiring process. There are other partnerships that are going on. Chief Cafaldi and his officers have worked very hard to be culturally sensitive and a great part of this community and working in partnership. And I think that we are starting from a point in this town very, very, very well postured and very far ahead of many other municipalities to continue that partnership. So that is one area that we think is very strong, and we're very proud of that. And in infrastructure, housing, and transportation. Sarah mentioned we're entering suburb. We are part of course, a broader municipality, an ecosystem that works together in several different ways. We want Brighton to reflect that diversity in different arrays and make sure that we are incorporating those ideas, the needs, and the diversity of our community there. Back to number 3 for a quick minute before I turn it over to Sarah. Diversity, equity, and inclusion can be viewed mostly as being fundamentally qualitative in nature. The world of ideas, thoughts, feelings, perspectives, and experiences that do not necessarily have sharp boundaries on them. But in reflecting those very broad things and incorporating that into a plan, we also want to make sure that the residents understand in the town board that there are some things that are quantitatively empirical or very straightforward. What we are recommending to the town is that there is an organizational assessment looking at areas of strength and opportunity for DEI. As Bill mentioned, that we have a DEI officer is also being worked into the process. But recruiting, training, and having a diverse and representative workforce using best practice strategies, also being mindful of the civil service process, which has to be attended to, increasing the diversity of the Brighton town government in order to reflect the community and show great progress in this area. And then lastly, in this area, we were asking that an annual report on progress with metrics related to DEI be produced so the town and the residents can see exactly what is being done in this area and make sure that we're securing funding in order to robustly sustain DEI efforts, and that all the departments within the town have their own strategies and metrics to qualitatively and quantitatively report back. All this involves training, all this involves effort, and all of it involves an investment, not only by the town and its leadership under Bill, but also for all of us as residents and members of this community, investing in this process, bringing our best towards it, keeping an open mind, and working with our neighbors and friends, and also our town leaders to make sure that Brighton's diversity continues to grow in the way it already has. Back over to my co-chair, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. As Rashid mentioned, Brighton is a landlocked inner ring suburb. We don't have acreage that has been unbuilt. Almost everything has been built. So now we need to change how we need to engage different strategies from what has traditionally worked in the past. Land use in particular is a challenge. But I think we're all up to that challenge. One of the items that I'm particularly excited about is on page 17, which is part of the engagement, partnership, inclusion, and representation task group focus idea. The bottom little stop sign there is support a town art committee to showcase culturally diverse artwork. Well, it can be bigger than that. I'm excited to see this reference of a town arts committee. Brighton has public art, both known and hidden. We can catalog these works. We can use local talent to increase our public art. Brighton can incorporate art to become an economic driver that encourages entrepreneurs in the creative arts, residents, students. There's no end to the creativity of those who call Brighton home. And we want to support all of that good work. This plan will be available for viewing shortly, not this evening, but very shortly. Anyone who wants to review this plan, look through it, comment on it, it will be available. And I would just like to reiterate that this is a living document. This plan is a beginning. It is a point of departure. Even though we've spent 2.5 years to get to this point, this is really the springboard moving forward. The IDEA Action Plan is a manifestation of those 2.5 years of work by members of the IDEA Board and the consultants. Brighton certainly has been living through difficult times in recent memory, as have most communities. And these challenges will be reflected in our work going forward. We intend on creating current experiences in Brighton that will influence future experiences and new generations who will make Brighton their home and be leaders for all of us. Rashid?
I would really like to thank Sarah and also Felicia for their very, very great leadership in this process. Also, the privilege of working with Gwen Inc. and her consultant team have been absolutely essential. But I would like to offer for all of us just a closing thought. We have an opportunity here to take something that is wonderful, a wonderful community that cares about each other and that cares about the broader community that we live in. The thoughts that are reflected here are aspirational, hopeful, and forward-looking. Working together, even through the tough times that we are living through as a nation, as a world, this offers an opportunity for us to continue to build, to continue to operate and incorporate good ideas, continue to flourish, and continue to set an example for those around us. I look forward to joining all of you in this conversation, continuing to develop this plan, but more importantly, I look forward to living the values that are espoused and reflected in here for all of us. Maybe at this time, we are joined by several of our other colleagues on the board. If any of them would like to just offer any comments or thoughts, we would certainly welcome that before we turn the meeting back over, of course, to Supervisor Maley. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present on the plan, and thank you on behalf of my co-chair and all of our colleagues on the board.
Rashid, Sarah, thank you both so much. And thanks to everybody on the committee. Most of the committee members were able to join us tonight, and that's really a testament to their commitment, not just to this plan, but to this community, and I appreciate that. Gwen, you and your team have been so much fun to work with. Many of you in the room have heard me say this before. When you came in and interviewed with us, you knocked my socks off. I feel very fortunate that we've had the opportunity to come this far on what is a journey. And as Sarah just said, if we were putting together this plan, and we've said this before about other plans, if we were putting together this plan to throw it on a shelf where it would gather dust, we would have failed. That's not why we came to this work. We came to this work because it must be a living, evolving, energizing document. And with the work of the committee, but also the work of the community, I can't underestimate how important it's going to be for us to gather feedback from members of the Brighton community as we go back out. We had comment through the World Cafes earlier. I am certainly hoping that when we come back, we will be able to do so in person, but whether it's in person or remotely, to have the opportunity to share thoughts about this plan with members of the community is going to be so important. So thank you all. And again, I will ask if anybody from the public does have comments about this plan. On the brief presentation you saw tonight, there's a lot more there to it. But if anybody does have anything they would like to say, I would ask that they do so when we get to the open forum portion of the meeting. And as I mentioned before, we also have 2 public hearings. And if you're here to speak to the noise, to the amendment to the town's noise law for the RG&E Winton Road project, or the public hearing on the potential removal of trees along the highway right-of-way, if you would hold your comments until we open those public hearings. Now, at the last town board meeting 2 weeks ago, we're changing gears here now, I discussed 2 separate matters involving RG&E. One relates to the matter that's on our agenda tonight, the subject of the public hearing, the planned gas main replacement project on Winton Road that is planned for this summer. Specifically tonight, the town board will be holding a public hearing relating to a proposed local law granting a temporary amendment to the town's noise law, which would permit a portion of the work, specifically work to be done on a limited area of Winton Road from the corner of Winton and Chelmsford Roads through the 12 Corners down to the corner of Winton and Greenwich, which is about a block south of Elmwood Avenue. So that's the first matter I talked about, and we'll have more to follow on that at the public hearing. The second matter I discussed 2 weeks ago relates to billing errors that were made on bills sent out by RG&E to customers that participate in the source power. Some people refer to it as ICON. Technically, it's Icon Energy, DBA, source power. That's why you might hear either one of those names. The Community Solar Program. And I want to stress the name of that program, the Community Solar Program, because it's that solar program where these billing errors arose. The bills included a large, I'll give you the air quotes, adjustment with a brief and confusing, in my opinion, and in the opinion of an awful lot of people that we've heard from, message of explanation. Now, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, shortly after we learned of these billing issues, the town filed a formal complaint against both RG&E and Source Power with the New York State Public Service Commission. Since that time, we've continued to hear from people who have received these erroneous bills. And frankly, we've not received nearly as much in the way of definitive answers, either from RG&E or Source Power, or for that matter, from the PSC, to guide us, to guide the customers who receive these bills to a solution to this serious problem. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, there seems to be a range of circumstances for individual customers receiving these bills. We've heard from people even that don't recall applying to be in the community solar program. We've heard from people who didn't receive bills from RG&E at all for months on end, even after calling the company and asking why weren't they receiving bills, telling RG&E they wanted to get bills. Now, we've even begun to hear from a couple of people who seem to have received new bills, and when they looked at the bill, yes, it eliminated the adjustment, but when they got to the last page, the adjustment was put back on again with no explanation, no more explanation than they got in the first place. Even though we had been advised verbally that at least for now, those adjustments would be removed. And by the way, those adjustments in at least one case, those new bills, not only don't say anything about a payment plan, but they come across as a bill that's in arrears, demanding that payment is due upon receipt. So the problem just seems to go from bad to worse for some of these people. And I feel for each of the folks that have gotten these bills. My position and the town's position continues to be that both RG&E and Source Power have let their community solar customers down. They've let the town down. Those customers must receive a real explanation of what occurred, an explanation that people can understand. And those erroneous bills must be reversed. If new bills go out, they must accurately and clearly reconcile charges and credits for each customer. And since we've heard from some people that don't even recall being signed up for the program in the first place, Source Power must demonstrate that they're not billing any customers that did not affirmatively sign up for the community solar program. That program was completely optional. Any customers that do have balances due on their accounts, after receiving an accurate accounting and explanation, finally, should receive compensation from Source and/or RG&E to reflect the impact of these billing errors and an interest-free payment plan. Not one they have to ask for, not one that suggests that they're in arrears and that if they don't accept it immediately, some kind of action is going to be taken against them, but an interest-free payment plan proactively offered that gives them at least a year to make payments. Now, again, I want to stress these serious billing errors relate only to Source Power's community solar program, which is supposed to be billed and credited on your RG&E bills. It's particularly frustrating to me that some of these egregious billing errors have caused some of our residents to lose confidence in the community choice aggregation program, an entirely separate sustainability program, and perhaps in our sustainability efforts altogether. So I need to say it again. The billing errors that those customers have received do not relate to the town's community choice aggregation program, the CCA, at all. The CCA actually continues to work very effectively, not only supplying renewable energy to most residential customers in the town of Brighton and to some small commercial customers, but doing so at a price of about 4.29 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a price that's fixed through the rest of 2022. That's a price that's far less than RG&E's current retail price for energy, even non-renewably generated energy. I do want to thank Sue Hughes-Smith and the Rocktricity team that have helped give us answers, give community members answers. Assistant to the supervisor, Bridget Monroe, who's been on the phone just for hours on end doing the same thing. We are going to continue to advocate for the residents of Brighton that received these erroneous bills until there's a satisfactory resolution, period. Finally, on a personal note, one of the reasons Brighton is such a special community, a community that so many people seek to call home, is our diversity. Diversity in race, diversity in faith, in ethnicity, in so many different elements. We are a community that overwhelmingly aspires to be a place where diverse communities of people can call home, can feel safe, and can be good neighbors, no matter who your neighbor is. As much as we aspire to be that community, sometimes reality conflicts with our ideals. I became aware last week of a radio broadcast on the Evan Dawson Connection show on WXXI AM, which was entitled, "Discussing the Motivations Bringing Black Americans to the Palestinian Cause." The guests on the show included Iman Abid Thompson, the Director of Advocacy and Organizing at the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, Jonathan Khoury, Palestinian American, graduate of RIT, and Jalil Muntakin, community organizer, as well as council member Robin Wilt. Freedom of speech is also one of our ideals. Under the First Amendment, we all have the right to speak and associate freely, regardless of our race, our religion, our ethnicity, our job. Supporting the rights of people who want to live a better life also squares with who we are. But if we are to turn our community ideals into reality and maintain those ideals in the real world, in our town, in our little corner of that real world, we must always be conscious of the impact of our words. We may have the legal right to use words that delegitimize. We may have the legal right to use words that demonize, but that doesn't give us the absolute moral right to use such words. If we use words in a way that delegitimize and demonize without a conscious effort to understand their impact on our neighbors, we failed our neighbors and we failed our community. Likewise, if we fail to take notice of those words and fail to push back when they're used in our presence, there too, we failed. I listened to that show probably half a dozen times now, and I am deeply disturbed by some of what I heard. I've heard from many in Brighton's Jewish community and from others that the show made them feel afraid or even unwelcome in their own town. Some expressed that they felt targeted and demonized as Jews, or that the very existence of the state of Israel had been delegitimized. It's important to honor and recognize the impact of words and acts such as these on those who may be targeted by those words, on those who may hear those words directly. In phone calls and emails and texts that I received, members of our Jewish community made it very clear to me that statements made during the show referencing genocide, referencing a system of white supremacy tied to Ashkenazi Jews, among others, were delegitimizing and demonizing. And to me, statements like those go to the very core of anti-Semitism, and I personally denounce them. If we are to build our community on our best aspirations, we must not allow anti-Semitism to stand unchallenged, any more than we can allow demonizing statements directed at other communities or other people to stand unchallenged. We must all do better. We cannot solve the problems of the world here in Brighton, but we can and we must work together to bring people together rather than to divide them. We'll now go on to the open forum. The open forum is an opportunity to address the town board about matters, whether or not they're on our agenda this evening. We may not respond to your questions if you have questions, particularly if they relate to matters not before the town board. But I assure you that we listen and we take your input seriously. If you would like to address the board during the open forum, as I mentioned before, you must join the meeting on Zoom if you're not already doing so. Please use the raised hand function in Zoom if you do intend to speak during the open forum. And I would ask if there are people who would like to comment on the idea plan presentation that you heard, if you can do so first, so that our consultant will be here and continue to hear those comments and guide our work forward. As always, each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address the board. I will advise speakers when they have 30 seconds left. I would ask that speakers please address their comments to the board, not to other speakers. Please do not use the open forum to make personal attacks of any kind. Our goal here tonight and our goal during the open forum held at every town board meeting is to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with the board and for us to be able to listen thoughtfully to your input. So again, I'll ask if there is anybody, particularly initially, if there is anybody that would like to address the board relating to the presentation you heard earlier tonight on the idea plan, to please use the raised hand function in your Zoom page, and you will be unmuted and have the chance to address the board. So with that, Bridget, if you would admit, if there is anyone that would like to address the board during the open forum, and again, initially specifically as it relates to the idea plan. I take it, Bridget, from the silence that there is no one who has initially raised their hand.
There is a raised hand, Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I thought I had unmuted myself. The first speaker, and she has her hand up, is Rachel Rasner.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rachel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My comments aren't directly related to the IDEA presentation, but they are connected based on what you just said, Supervisor. I am disgusted and appalled at the remarks that you just made regarding Councilmember Wilt. Everything that you just accused the people on that radio show of doing, you just did to her and the people who spoke on that radio show and the thousands of people in this city and across this country and world who agree with that perspective. If you want to welcome all voices in this town, you welcome all of them. I am absolutely shaking here and embarrassed and humiliated that those words came out of the mouth of the supervisor of the town in which I live for the last 20 years and pay taxes. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you. Is the next speaker, please?
The next speaker is Mike Boucher.
Mike, go ahead. Oh, Mike, you're muted.
Thanks, Supervisor Maley, Town Council members, and other elected officials on the call. I was going to say that one of the reasons I was sticking around tonight is that I knew there were calls from the community that were unfairly targeting Councilmember Wilt, asking you all to kind of take some of the allegations very seriously against her of what had been said. And I was encouraging you not to do that because of her role in this community and the how she has served us. And, you know, I guess I'm really, I don't even know what to say with the arguments that if we're going to talk about words that delegitimize and demonize without conscious impact, I really wish those would be considered for all the words that have been said. And that those would all be actually spoken to in some way or another, and not just singling out certain words or certain people's words. So I too actually feel kind of caught off guard by some of those initial remarks. I want a Brighton that is safe, secure, livable for everyone who's involved. And that includes our council members, that includes our supervisor, that includes members of the community. And I don't see that as being present, given some of the remarks that have been made in the past week by official organizations that are speaking on behalf of the Jewish community and some grassroots organizations. I understand that there are differences of opinion, but again, you use the words delegitimizing and demonizing, and I think those have certainly been present in conversations at official levels this past week.
Thank you, Mike. The next speaker, Bridget?
Yes, we don't have anyone with their hands up, so I'm just going to be calling them as I see them on my screen. The next speaker is Pamela Kim Adams.
Go ahead, Ms. Adams.
Yes, I'm also here for the same reason. I'm absolutely appalled, sickened. I'm on vacation right now, and I came on this meeting because I knew it might come to this. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that, you know, we just listened to these presentations on the IDEA board. And, you know, after that, you know, the remarks from the supervisor were just completely off base. You know, this is beyond, I don't even know what to say about it really. You know, it's like gaslighting an entire community and, you know, really triggering for some of us who have experienced that in our personal lives, I will say, to see this on a mass scale in our own town. The other thing I want to say is that, you know, this support and protection seems to be very one-sided. You know, what happened, where was the protection for Robin Wilt, for Iman, for other people, for Rachel, you know, who lived in fear all summer, all fall because of what the target attacks coming from this community. You know, nobody spoke up for them. So why is it that, these three people, Jaleel, Iman and Robin go on this show to express their experience, their views, and suddenly they're the ones attacking people and making people feel unsafe? I don't get it at all. And I'm extremely outraged. I'm not usually one to speak off the cuff. I always prepare if I'm going to speak, but I'm just so angry and so disgusted, really.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Iman Ibid Thompson.
Go ahead, Iman.
So I had no plans on speaking, Supervisor Maley, until you called me out directly for using my opportunities and my platform to speak on the Palestinian perspective. And in the last few weeks, I reached out to you and the town board, each town board member, asking to meet with the Palestinian community so that you could all have a conversation with every one of us who lives in your community and beyond, so that we could discuss not only the harassment, but the discriminatory practices and issues we have faced in the last 8 to 9 months in your town. And what you each chose to do was ignore me. Every one of you but Robin Wilt ignored me. When I sought help and sought guidance, each and every one of you ignored me besides Robin. What that says to me after I've now heard your statement is that you have chosen to be discriminatory, not only towards Palestinians, but others who are choosing to stand in solidarity with Palestine. We too are your constituents, and you have chosen to ignore us. And that's not just about ignoring. At this point, this is outright discrimination against Palestinians who have asked to sit down with you and have a cordial conversation about the harms that we have all felt. But instead, we're being vilified. We have been vilified. And what I am absolutely appalled by is that you are choosing to stand by a certain set of the community instead of the entire community. You have been very loud and clear in both your actions and inactions. We have heard you, we have seen you, and it is an absolute disappointment to say that the town of Brighton is within my hometown. I'm absolutely appalled by the statements, and each and every one of you is a reason behind why others will have chosen to vilify us in my own community, and why any sort of level of hate crime could be increased against us when we see that no one is standing beside us and we are being silenced in the way that you are trying to silence, of which you will never silence us. I just want to acknowledge that. You will never silence us. I'm just absolutely appalled. It is so disheartening to know that we are being ignored and you are sitting here only vilifying Palestinians, when I have addressed the anti-Palestinian bigotry we have witnessed in your community.
30 seconds. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jess Fleming.
Hi, I've been listening on YouTube, and I felt inclined to join into this meeting on the Zoom link after hearing what I consider to be the messaging that Robin Wilt among the Palestinian community, the Black community within Brighton, and the greater community experiences in Brighton is not new. This messaging that from this supposedly diverse and accepting community that presents one side, and that side is not the side of the majority of even the Jewish community, right, within Brighton. And this has been going on. This has been going on for how long, right? How long? And all of this mudslinging, attacks or attempts at attacks and discrediting Robin's message. It's really embarrassing. It's the reason I have actually chosen to raise my children in a different school district where they will experience less gaslighting of communities, of minority communities, of people of color. I'm at a loss for words because, like others, I'm not prepared. I'm just extremely angry. I'm embarrassed to be from this town, and we as a community need to know when all of this is going to stop, because it's not okay.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is James Appel.
Evening. My name is James Appel, and I am the Messianic Rabbi at Congregation Shema Israel on Edgewood Avenue. And I've been a Brighton resident for about 35 years. And I want to thank you, Supervisor Mealy, for your statements. I was in complete agreement with them, except for the fact that I think they should have gone further to censor and actually remove Ms. Wilt from the board for what went on the radio show. I've studied this situation in the Middle East for many years, and it was very disturbing to me to hear a panel discussion where people were supposedly bringing forth information that was based on truths not being revealed to the media concerning the dynamics of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian organizations. And it was obvious to me that none of the participants had a clue to the true history and complexity of that situation. The true facts of this conflict are many, but I just would quote one, that Israel has repeatedly offered land to the Palestinian organizations. We call it Land for Peace, and those organizations have refused. And when Israel unilaterally gave them land by just moving out, they began shooting rockets at Israel. So the facts of this are very many, how the Arab nations have treated the Palestinians, not giving them citizenship. There is a very complex situation there. And instead, I heard the panelists basing their opinions on basically what I would say Palestinian propaganda, which describes Jewish people as colonialists, oppressors with evil motivation.
30 seconds, please.
Ms. Wilt's participation in this demonstrated her ongoing problem with the Jewish minority in Brighton, which of course came to a surface last summer. And it was just amazing tonight to realize, I didn't know that the diversity, the IDA thing was going to come up, which addresses that whole situation, and that this radio show was going to have gone on. So it's very disturbing.
Time, please. Time, Mr. Appel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Emma Lee.
Hi, yes. So I am very frustrated to find ourselves yet again in the same situation. This has been going on, in fact, since the primary in June of last year. I am absolutely disgusted by Supervisor Mealy's statements. They are wildly inappropriate. Rabbi, no disrespect, but your facts are not facts. In fact, they are wildly inaccurate. Just yesterday, the state of Israel murdered a 14-year-old Palestinian boy just outside of Bethlehem, a child. Okay, the atrocities that are happening in Palestine are unbelievable. And to ignore those is just wildly inhuman. It's atrocious. So I stand with Robin Wilt and Iman, and I really appreciate that they continue to stand with oppressed people, and they continue to stand up for what's right, that they continue to stand up for human rights and for justice. And Supervisor Mealy, if you want to call yourself an ally, you better get your act together.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Heather Coyne.
Heather, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I didn't actually put my hand up. I had intended to speak regarding the noise ordinance, so I was my comment.
That's fine. Then we'll call on you again when that public hearing opens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
I have Mike Dorfner.
Go ahead, Mr. Dorfner. Mr.
I'm
Dorsey?
sorry, I had my hand up.
You did not? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else? Then
There are
we'll-
no other hands up at this time.
Thank
I would,
you.
I would like to speak as well.
I'm sorry, who
Oh.
is that?
My name is Nate Baldo.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Baldo.
Thank you. I just joined the meeting just a second ago. So I missed most of it, but I just wanted to express my unequivocal support for Councilmember Robin Wilt and Iman Abid Thompson, as well as the other wonderful panelists on WXXI that talked about the important connections of Black and Palestinian solidarity. I've just been utterly, I really can't frankly put it into words how utterly appalled I have been with the attacks against Robin, against Iman, and you know, as a Jewish person, and I know I'm not the only one that feels this way, I completely support the Palestinian struggle for liberation, and I completely support the struggle for Black liberation. I recognize that human rights are not a zero-sum game, that our liberation is collective. So I know for me as a Jewish person, I won't be safe until all Black lives matter and until Palestine is truly free. And if this town wants to really live up to its, you know, supposed reputation of being a beacon of human rights and progressive values, I would really urge the rest of the board to get behind Robin Wilt and Iman. They've been incredibly courageous. They have put themselves in incredibly uncomfortable positions because it's the right thing to do. And it just shows. And more people are recognizing it. And it's about time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baldo. Is there anyone else?
Yes.
Is there anyone else, Bridget, with their hand up?
I don't have any hands. I do have 2 people on phones.
Is there anyone else?
Yes, I'd also like to speak.
With their hand up?
Okay, yes, this person is on the phone.
2 people on phone. Is there anyone else?
Yes, I'd also like to speak.
I think we're getting an echo because of these. There seems to be an echo. And it does seem to be related perhaps to the phones.
Yes. That caller is now muted herself.
If the caller is at the number that ends in 161.
Yes.
If you would like to go ahead, please, and I particularly true in the case of people just with phone numbers, I would ask that you state your name and your address, please. All right, I guess not.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello?
yes. Now we've got you. Go ahead,
Hi.
please.
Okay, very good. I apologize for the technical difficulties. My name is Roberta Schwartz. I am a resident in Brighton, and I am also a Jewish member of the community. And I also participated in the meeting that was on WXXI. I thoroughly applaud WXXI for having the guts and the integrity of presenting voices which have been silenced over and over again. I applaud what Robin Wilt is doing on behalf of the town council. I applaud Iman Abid. I'm horrified by the human rights violations that are occurring right now in Palestine. We haven't spoken about Amnesty International, but we should, and we should think about it in relation to Israel and Israel being called an apartheid state. Again, I am a Jewish woman, but I want justice
for those people who have been oppressed and who have not been given a voice. And if we in Brighton are proposing, to have an equity and diversity council, let's extend that to people of color. We have one Black woman on our board who has been vilified over and over and over again. Let's come together as a people, as Jews, as Blacks, as everyone and anyone, and treat one another with respect and listen to one another instead of really, this whole thing has got to stop. And again, I am a member of the Jewish community, but I'm not afraid of looking at a situation for what it is and trying to learn more about it. And in this case, cries of anti-Semitism are completely misdirected. What we're doing here is really undermining freedom of speech. And again, I'm proud of what WXXI did last week. And I'm proud of people who are supporting Robin and Iman and are trying to let people have a voice for a change. Let's not all think of ourselves as victims when indeed, at least I don't feel I'm a victim because I'm Jewish. But I do want to look at myself, and I do want to look at the actions of people in Israel who are, particularly the military, when our American dollars are funding the military over there and people are being killed.
30 seconds, please.
Violence. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else, Bridget?
We do not have any other hands up.
Thank you. Then can I have a motion to approve the agenda tonight?
Excuse me, Bill, I'd like to respond to your comments.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Right. On February 9th, 2022, I received a request to stand in solidarity with someone deeply connected to this community during an upcoming segment on Connections with Evan Dawson. And that segment was on Black American and Palestinian solidarity. I said yes without hesitation, as I have done in many instances when constituents have approached me to be an allyship, including on December 30th, 2019, when a constituent wrote me to be part of a non-denominational group to learn more about microaggressions towards Jewish people that often lead to more overt hate crimes. And on July 24th, 2018, when a constituent wrote me to show up in support of a teen who was experiencing racial harassment. As a concerned elected official and a human rights activist, I think it is critically important to show up with intention and compassion, especially when asked. And it has been a hallmark of my tenure in office. That's why it's unfathomable to me that the attacks against my characters and lies being disseminated about me and what I have done and said have continued virtually unabated for 9 months. And you have said nothing, Bill, and my colleagues on this town board have said nothing. And at this point, I can only assume that the willful spread of lies is not only meant to delegitimize me, but to inflict emotional and physical harm on me, my family, and friends. And surely I've already been subjected to specific incredible threats from people in this community. And I keep reflecting about how this is unfolded, and I'm truly floored by the way that people have made this about themselves while dismissing Palestinian human rights. Literally everyone who has had an issue or is angry is because they want to center their own feelings and experiences and not the issue of Palestinian human rights in solidarity with those who are seeking redress in that area. And the notion that standing up for Palestinian human rights is taking sides or divisive or tantamount to vilifying Israel or it just demonstrates how people pervert the pursuit of human rights into some type of zero-sum game that pits us all against one another. And you, Supervisor Maley, had fallen into that pattern. And it just bears repeating that instead of focusing on the plight of those seeking human rights, those who are opposed or merely seeking to uphold the unjust status quo will instead seek to critique and police the language of the oppressed and those who stand in solidarity with oppressed groups. And I just encourage everyone to listen to the show for themselves. I don't think that you listen to the show as many times as you said, because you have lied about what was said on that show, Supervisor Maley. I spoke about the importance of uplifting marginalized voices through the idea board. I spoke of the importance of viewing town policy through the lens of inclusion and equity so as not to exclude any group from full participation in our town government and the services it offers. And I spoke about the history of the Black liberation movement and its connection to the global struggle against oppression, because it is Black History Month. And your words recognizing Black History Month ring utterly hollow in light of your actions tonight. None of my language vilified any group, but rather the theme was solidarity and the importance of uplifting all voices and ensuring that we don't erase anyone's experience or truth, as you, Supervisor Maley, are trying to do tonight.
Now we'll go on to the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second, Christine.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio. Aye. Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye, but I believe Councilmember Warner is here now as well. I know I saw him come in. Yes.
Yes, I am here and I do approve the agenda, Bill. Unfortunately, I'm only in a position to listen in for the moment without video.
Okay.
I will join video shortly.
That's fine. We do have two public hearings tonight. The first one concerns a proposed local law to amend the town's noise control law temporarily to accommodate gas main work along Winton Road. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor. Notice was in the January 26th edition of the Daily Record.
Thank you. Then I declare this public hearing to be open. And I'm going to, I know we have a couple of representatives here on behalf of RG&E or the construction planning team. And I will turn it over to one of them to make a presentation on this project and the public hearing.
Okay, well, that would be me. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Supervisor Maley. Good evening, everyone. I'm Stacy Bartle. I manage the public outreach aspect for RG&E. In that role, I am the liaison between our project and construction teams and our customers and the general public. So for those of you who didn't attend the public meeting, we thought we'd just run through our presentation very briefly. It's not very long, just to give a high-level review of what it is we're talking about. And then certainly we can address any questions or concerns afterward. So let me share my screen here. Okay, I think we're good. Can everybody see it?
No.
No. Okay, we're not good. All right, give me another minute here. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're good now.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the project is called the South Winton Road Gas Main Replacement Project. With this project and with all our other projects, we are committed to providing safe and reliable service to all our customers. Our top priority is working collaboratively with our neighbors to ensure that all improvements are performed with minimal disruption to the environment and the communities that we serve. Just moving my screen in here a little bit. This was as we said for the public meeting.
Sharing anymore.
You can't see it. All right, I'm gonna go back.
Yeah, you're
okay. We'll stop playing around. Okay, sorry about that. Just trying to make it so I didn't have to look to the side here. So at the bottom here and later in the presentation, we will provide everyone. We've got a dedicated project information, phone number, project line, and we have a dedicated outreach email. So at any time throughout the project's life cycle, anyone with questions or concerns can get a response in real time. This will be a 24-hour number, and someone will be manning that at all times. So a project overview, what is it and why? So the impacted project area is this green line here. It runs beneath South Winton Road between Palmerston Road on the north, which is up here. It's just shy of Highland Avenue, and Newton Drive down here to the south. This very shorter blue line here identifies the night work, which is the reason why we're here this evening to discuss. It's primarily the 12 Corners proper intersection. This project will replace approximately 5,000 feet, just about a mile of original gas main infrastructure, which was installed in the 1940s, and replace that with new 16-inch steel pipe. This is a feeder main, which serves approximately 500 RG&E customers and indirectly impacts many more throughout the town of Brighton and the city of Rochester. It is the main feed to other corresponding gas systems in the area. The project need. The project is necessary to meet the company's commitment to provide safe, reliable service to customers and comply with new reliability requirements. The scope of work, as mentioned, will replace approximately 1 mile of underground gas main, initially installed in the late 1940s, that runs along South Winton Road between Newton Drive and Palmerston Road. Benefits to the region. This upgrade project will improve the overall resiliency and reliability of the entire system while simultaneously modernizing the pipeline's individual components. There will be no noticeable above grade changes or impacts to the construction area, and the new gas system will safely provide exceptional service to the community for many years to come. That is, once the project is completed. Components have a projected lifespan of up to 100 years. So again, some of this is repetitious, but just to make sure everybody's aware, replacing approximately 5,000 feet of outdated gas main with new 16-inch steel pipe, installing the new gas main under the pavement alongside the existing gas main. Once constructed, the new gas main will be placed into service and the existing gas main will be decommissioned. Milling and resurfacing the roadway from Palmerston Road in the north all the way down to Newton Drive to the south. Our tentative start date is April of 2022 with a tentative completion date of the late fall, also 2022. Also, part of the scope of work will be updating the few customers who are directly connected to this section with updated plastic piping and metering equipment. The replacement downtime required to perform the service upgrade is minimal, just a few hours. And as this is a feeder main, there are very few customers directly connected to this section that is being replaced. So public outreach, as I mentioned, this is a huge component of this project. We have a lot of stakeholders involved. We've got schools, first responders, businesses, residents, religious organizations, one-off or things such as the Lilac 5K, the farmers market, all sorts of different stakeholders. And we're working very diligently to make sure that we get out ahead of this and connect with everybody so that they're aware of our scope of work and, if need be, how they can get in touch with us. So extensive communication and strategizing with public safety agencies, community engagement organizations, neighborhood and religious associations, and our customers. We are committed to having ongoing and proactive notification to all impacted stakeholders. We will send out notification letters prior to construction activity, during construction to provide updates, and then upon construction completion. Public outreach will support this project through notification letters, as we mentioned, our project fact sheet, which will accompany the notification letters and can also be found on our website, field cards, which will be their kind of like business cards that our construction crews can hand out, to passersby or anyone with questions or concerns while they're working, so that we don't deter them from the job at hand and potentially, jeopardize their safety, taking their focus off what they're doing. We prefer to have anyone with questions or concerns reach out to me. I will be the person receiving the phone calls and emails, and I will get back to you directly. Door hangers for those people that do have to have a tie over, as we mentioned on the previous slide, that's not a lot, but those few people, few residents, they'll get door hangers on their doors, again, with contact information, dates, what's going to be done, why and when, so they know what to expect. Our corporate website is updated continually throughout the project. We will have construction signs, both for pedestrians and motorists. And we'll have the project-specific phone number, the 24-hour response commitment from us for that, which we mentioned previously, as well as the dedicated public outreach email. So again, this is just that in a different format. This is our phone number. Feel free to take that down, but you're going to see it all over the place. Refer to the South Winton Road Gas Project so that we know exactly what it is your concern is about. You can access our website, rg&e.com, under reliability projects. And by all means, feel free to email us at outreach@rg&e.com. So that's it. I know it's a lot of information. It's fast. I want to be respectful of our time here. So I know that the night work portion of the project has been determined by New York State Department of Transportation. It was the best optimal situation and strategy in dealing with so many different components. So I'm sure, people have questions and we're more than happy to address them at this time.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Let's, again, anybody that would like to speak to this public hearing can do so. And I know Heather Coyne had indicated an interest. So Heather, why don't we start with you, and maybe we can unshare the screen so that we'll be able to see everybody. If you need to put something back up on the screen, go ahead and do it. But Heather, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm a Brighton resident here, and I understand this project, which I recognize is really important maintenance. I'm not against the project at all, but I understand it's calling for about a month and a half or 4 to 6 weeks of night work, likely starting, I've heard, in June, depending on weather and whatnot. My real hope, of course, is that we can avoid having any night work. Absent that possibility, I'm asking if the town can require a reasonable accommodation in not allowing the night work to begin until after school gets out. In the middle of June, high school students will be taking their first real final exams since before the pandemic. Younger kids will be struggling to keep it together until summer begins. The last thing any of them need is noise-induced insomnia for weeks on end. I mean, none of us needs that, but students especially have already been through enough. Any of us who have heard the motorcycles on 590 or fireworks in other towns knows how far sound carries. With saws tearing up roads and trucks beeping in reverse right in the middle of town, I can pretty much guarantee that a lot of residents, besides me, a lot of residents will let you know how they feel about it. By postponing the night work until, say, like June 27th, I know the dates vary slightly from school to school, but around June 27th, the project coordinators will likely stave off some complaints, and more importantly, show that they really do want to work well with the whole community. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. And I'm going to hold my questions to the end, but that, I know you had, at the earlier community meeting, you had raised questions about school events and the end of the school period. Stacy, can you address any of that at this point? In terms of the,
So
or Brittany, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. So at this point, we still don't have an awarded contractor, so we don't have a firm schedule. That's going to be another 3 weeks out or so. What I'd say is we're more than happy to try to accommodate that request as soon as we can start working with our contractor. As long as it doesn't delay the project schedule at all, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to accommodate that request of holding off the work until late June. We'll be back in touch as soon as I start having those discussions with the contractor, and can keep you and the town board and everybody informed of our schedule as we receive it.
I just want to respond to that. I just want to say thank you. I want you to understand that I am not, again, I live in Meadowbrook. I know the history. I completely understand the importance of this maintenance. You know, I don't want a gas explosion. I get it. I just want you to understand that it's truly just about the sleep. That is it. And I looked at the calendar again, and you know, I understood from the original meeting you guys had. You said you're trying to, you know, please multiple stakeholders and have the night work be more towards the summer. You know, our schools just get out late up here. So,
yes,
you know, and having high school myself, knowing there's tons of kids right near the heart of 12 Corners, that's, I mean, you know, as an adult, I can deal with it. I can chug coffee, I can do what I need to do, but our kids cannot do that. And they literally are going to be having things for the first time since, you know, whenever before the pandemic started. So that's hopefully this can work. I just appreciate you guys hearing me on that.
Yeah.
Thank you,
we
Heather.
appreciate
Yeah,
your feedback.
We appreciate your input, and to the extent that we can be flexible, we absolutely will be. You know, some things are, and we're more than happy to collaborate and work with you. Some things, you know, it's not up to us, and some things, you know, they are what they are. But to the extent that we can, we will absolutely take that under consideration and work with you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else not on the town board that would like to address the board during this public hearing? If so, please raise your hand remotely. How about members of the town board? Any questions that any of you have at this point?
I do have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
And again, I understand that this is going to involve, you know, estimates on your part, but I wanted to know the impact of the schedule of the night work. Exactly how much time are we shaving off the overall timeline with the night work? And if you could kind of project with, you know, based on the night work starting a certain time, or, you know, if we started the night work later, does that negatively impact the schedule? Or so
Sure.
just, yeah, how much time are we talking about here?
Yeah, so let me do just a bit of quick math as we're talking. As far as when we start the night work isn't as big of a deal as being able to perform the night work. The county has given us work hours of 7 p.m. to 5 a.m., which basically gives us 10 working hours to get this work done. If we were to do it during the day, we would have a maximum of 6 hours. So we're getting almost, you know, we're getting 40% more work per day done. So if we do the night work, we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks. If we do it during the day, we're looking at least 40% more time. So without doing the math, that would be, you know, what it would be. It would almost double it. So, and then it would additionally create a lot more traffic backups and potential lane closures because we are crossing that main intersection. So it's best to do that work at night because then it gets more complicated with traffic and things like that. So at best, you're looking at a 40% increase. At worst, I'd say, you know, it could double the time. So that would be my quick estimate right off the top of my head.
Okay, so you probably would not make it by the end of the season if this night work doesn't happen.
Correct, that, or we would have to, start looking at measures to make up time doing weekend work and being more disruptive, more days in order to make up that time.
Thank you.
And while I mentioned board members, if the attorney or department heads that are here have any questions, I see the town attorney. Ken, go ahead.
Thank you, Bill. I've heard from RG&E that the county DOT has given restricted work hours and the state DOT is dictating the need for this night work. Could you get us some written verification of that from those entities? We have not received that.
We had sent some correspondence to Mike Guyon just yesterday with the county's comments in preparation for this meeting and our meeting back on the 10th, requesting it because the state DOT, they only are involved in that small section right near Monroe Avenue. It's, 98% of the project is dictated by Monroe County DOT. So we did provide those comments too.
So is there a problem getting something from New York State DOT?
We forwarded an email that just said that the county was working to make sure that the DOT didn't have an issue with it, and we've coordinated all of our schedules with them, but it never came back from the state that it needed to be done at night. Just that the Monroe County DOT wanted it done at night, and they confirmed that the state DOT did not have a disagreement with that.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does to me. When do you, I know you said this, but I missed it a little bit. When do you expect to award your contract?
The middle of March, about 3 weeks from now.
So at that point in time, once you have a contractor, you'd have a better idea of what the actual construction schedule is going to look like going forward?
Yeah, because I'll know that their staffing levels, I can make assumptions now, but if they put one crew versus 2 or 3 crews working on it, how quickly they're planning on doing it. So it's hard to make any definitive answers until we have them on board.
If I can just interrupt on that real quickly, Ken, isn't information like that in the bid specs?
We don't dictate their crew staffing levels or where they're going to start. We dictate a start date and an end date, mostly a completion date. So we say you need to have this project done to this level of satisfaction, which is, through milling and resurfacing full restoration by the end of paving season. So by the end of November of 2022, and then they staff the project accordingly. They confirm that they can make that date, but we don't make them provide staffing levels at the time of bid.
Is it possible to, and I'm sorry, Ken, for interrupting you, but I just want to keep the flow. Is it possible to incorporate, since the bids haven't yet been awarded, is it possible to incorporate milestone dates within that schedule? Start and finish dates for the night work, start and finish dates for the work that's going to require the 1-lane closure on the northern part, addressing the issues of avoiding school activities, as Ms. Coyne is there any possibility of incorporating some more milestones like those in the schedule of work?
So in general, the answer would be yes. For this project, the answer would be no, because we are so late in the bid process. To be frank, our bid process takes quite a long time. And right now we're at the final approvals. So we finished our final round of clarification, and it's actually going to our board of directors and others for final approval before we can communicate it. So there are people in procurement who have the information available, but they don't share that with me or the contractors until it's approved by our board. So there's an apparent bidder who wins, and then we just have to go through and get that approval from all of the appropriate authorities before we can share the information. If we were to add any of those milestones at this point, it would create at least another month delay in award, which would then impact the construction start of mid-April.
So just, if I could just ask a couple other questions along those lines. If the award of the contract by RG&E is anticipated for mid-March, what is the need to have the approval of the temporary noise ordinance amendment tonight? Why could the town not just complete the public hearing, maybe even keep this public hearing open and await more detailed information from RG&E through your contractor as when that night work is really going to take place? And then we could reconvene and tailor our local law to meet that anticipated actual schedule. Would that cause any trouble?
So some issues that I see with that is if the town doesn't approve the noise ordinance, we would need to go back and start working with the other agencies to get approval, which would require probably changes to the traffic control plan, you know, different work hours, and then go back to our contractor to change the bid. So that would be that. And then the other thing is if there are unforeseen circumstances, you know, weather or some other events when they fall behind schedule, we would then be forced to either come back and ask for an amendment to that. So my preference would be to leave it a little more open as it's proposed right now, so that there's no complications if anything happens. And because we'll be back and forth in the area. I've said before, and the nature of our work is linear, and then we go back and re-excavate. So we'll install the new gas main, and we'll go back and we install the new gas main. We are covering the trench, you know, backfilling it as we go, and then we gas up the new main, and then we go back and services. So we'll be re-excavating some of those same locations at a later date. And then finally we redig up the old gas main to make those abandonments. And then additionally, we'll be doing the milling and resurfacing. And so all of those dates, you know, are even if we get a schedule from our contractor, are not set in stone. Things can move, you know, a couple weeks here and a couple weeks there, and they may plan on staffing it with 2 people, and then it looks like they can't, or 2 crews, and then they can't get it done. So they may bring in 3 crews or 4 crews so that they can meet our target expectations. So even with a schedule, things change all the time, as it does in construction. So I would prefer to leave it as written for those risk reasons.
Right, and I'll just share with you and the community that staff has been talking about the parameters of those dates being just a little bit too broad now, and perhaps a recommendation to the board that either it awaits, we can get better information from as to what the actual critical path is going to be for the performance of that night work, and then give them some latitude within that. Or if you would rather take action this evening, then perhaps have a definitive start date of no earlier than, and then pick a date that starts after the end of the school year. So we could say no earlier than June 30th, for example, and then let the path run as it will. And if RG&E needs to ask for an amendment, they can come back and have that discussion with you. So those were my questions. Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you, Ken. Any other members with questions? Or any questions from other members of the audience? I do still, then I'll start in with the questions that I have, and just, I'll start with a follow-up, because the two reasons that I heard that it's difficult to tailor that time now, or to wait, the first one was troubling because I think it's important that we focus on the area of the night work. And I know there's going to be times you're going to be up the north end, down farther to the south end, you're going to be paving, but none of that is night work. And before we're at a point where we can take action on this, we need to have a sense that this is when the night work is going to be done. I'm glad to hear that you're in a position to work after the school year, but I think it's going to be important to know that that work can be completed before the school year then begins again. And I don't, given that the contract won't be awarded for 3 weeks and work won't start for a month after that, it seems to me we do have some time and some flexibility to really try to nail down as close as we, and I know construction does change orders happen. I'm hopeful that we can accommodate those changes. Some of, weather, but look, weather, if we're going to have weather concerns, whether we do it tonight or whether we do it in 2 weeks or even 4 weeks, the weather is going to be what the weather is going to be. And I'm certainly not comfortable with a law that would allow night work to go on as late as the middle of November. I know that's not anybody's intent, but I do think we need to be in a better position to that down. Now, I know you've talked to the school district, at some length, and that's probably ongoing. I'm thinking of exams, as Ms. Coyne mentioned, and I assume they've given you an end date on when exams would be over at either the high school or the middle school. Have you discussed with them graduation? I'm sure we would hate to be doing night work on the evening that they're holding their graduation, for example. I don't know when graduation is this year.
Supervisor, the town clerk just shared with me, the man of many talents and information, that high school graduation is scheduled for June 21st.
20 what? 6th?
2-1.
Oh, 2-1. Okay. All right. Good.
So if I could just address some of the things so I don't forget them. As far as not paving or not doing night work in November, it is my understanding that the expectation would be for us to do some of those milling and resurfacing activities during night work, and that would occur in November due to the length of the project, and that basically that last month we would be anticipating continuing those operations. So
and even the milling and even the milling and paving would not be done during daytime hours. There's no way to do that without essentially
Patrick, you can go ahead and
correct. The general requirement is that any work that would require a lane closure within the 12 corners intersection would require night work. So milling and resurfacing, we got to hit both sides of the road. There are lane closures, there are lane shifts, and that would have to be performed at night.
And you'll forgive my asking these questions, but it goes back to the question that the town attorney asked a moment ago. We have not seen, and maybe something came in at least from the county today, but we have not seen a more comprehensive written or someone coming in from the state DOT, and I don't know how comprehensive the county's letter is, describing for us the nature of which work will require night work and when that'll be done. So I do, no pun intended, I do feel like I'm shooting in the dark here a little bit. I'm asking this question, and I know that we had the communication back and forth, and I appreciate you getting back to me. But we also, without the contract being awarded, we don't know where project staging is going to take place, either of equipment or materials. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Depending on who the contractor is, they might move it in from a remote site every day is kind of the anticipation at this point, because there is obviously no room along the right of way or properties along there. But we would not have that set in stone until after award.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard for me to identify any place, right in the construction area.
Yeah. The hours, and I gather that the hours that you would be able to work, the much shorter daytime hours, largely relates to the additional mobilization and demobilization each day, getting the detour set up, waiting until after rush hour ends and the like, which you don't have to the same extent for night work. So your period of work during the nighttime would be longer. The trade-off, the balancing between weekend work versus night work, I assume that some of the time elements of work that if it was done on the weekend might give you a little more flexibility because there's no rush hour. Do you believe you could shorten the amount of night work that would ultimately be required if there was some weekend work? And I know weekend work comes with its own challenges, but I just want to have a sense of what that trade-off is. Sure. So I am unsure of the answer to that, I guess, as I wouldn't expect to be able to cut off much with the loss of productivity, because we're not even in the 6-hour duration. We're not even talking about the additional time for a more complex traffic control plan. We're literally just talking about working hours. So, at worst, you're looking at an hour to an hour and a half of setup and takedown every day. So we may only be getting 3 hours of actual construction work in per day. I wouldn't expect to be able to make that up if I could force these people to work 7 days a week through all of construction season, which I also don't think is a possibility. That's not very good work-life balance.
Understand. Yep.
So we might be able to add a Saturday or maybe a Saturday and a Sunday periodically, but I wouldn't think that we would be able to get people to come in, for 8 weeks straight, working every day.
Sure.
So I really do, with the stipulations from the county, and I did send some emails to Mike Guyon. Maybe he didn't get to forward those, from John Raymond at the county, outlining why they made that decision and why they believed night work was best. And maybe those just haven't been able to be shared yet.
So I just read them, Brittany.
Yeah.
So John Raymond email that I read said, the concerns of the residents can be overcome by foam earplugs. What's the big deal? I think that night work is the lesser of two evils. That's what Mr. Raymond's email to Mr. Guyon's, to RG&E said.
Yes,
And
I know it wasn't a
quoting,
very,
actually,
I wasn't a very
quoting, and I'm-
professional, and I think
well,
that
let me
that's why
just
it
finish,
wasn't
if you
shared.
would, Brittany. I don't see anything in what Mike just shared with me that requires night work from Monroe County DOT, nor from the state DOT. So you've made that representation, and I'm going to put a sharp edge on this for you, Brittany. RG&E's reputation with the town right now is not good. We are struggling to trust what you're telling us on a number of fronts. So we're going to need some verification. So please get us some verification that Monroe County DOT and the state DOT is actually requiring night work. I don't see it right now. I'm sorry. I don't.
And so it's not mandatory, but again, he did say in that email, it would be reduced to 6 hours. So now we're in the, because it was not ever brought up to do it during the day. It was brought up to do it at night. When we thought we may not get this variance, I went back to the county and said, I asked the permits department with who he works with, that what is the possibility of doing day work if we do not get this variance from the town? And that is the response that I got was, sure, it's possible you'll be able to work 6 hours a day. That doesn't make much sense. We have to balance, the inconvenience of some for the benefit of more is the sum of that email. So that's the response we got when we asked the formal question.
I understand, but that's a slightly different message now to the town board members. It's not that the county DOT and the state DOT are demanding and requiring night work. It's just that it is the better option. And now the question for the town board to ask itself is, should we grant this temporary noise ordinance because it will be better for our residents to have the work done at night rather than have the work done during the day? That's a slightly different question. And so I think that's really the question that's being presented to the town board, or will be once we finish this public hearing.
Sure. And, that it was our understanding that the county would not issue the permit until, again, we, got some hesitation from the town board and the representatives. So we went back to the county just very recently, if you look at the date on that email, and asked the question. So, things have changed just due to the nature of conversations that we've had with the town board in fearing that we won't get this variance and looking to still keep our project moving forward. So the conversation has changed a little bit within the past couple of weeks.
A couple more questions I have, but first, since we've mentioned these items of communication, and since I actually have another item of communication, it's Brittany, it's your email to Mike today, changing slightly the geography of where the night work would go, extending it all the way south to, I say all the way south, two houses farther down to Greenwich. So the area you would like to propose would be the area from Chelmsford to Greenwich, and that's in an email dated today, February 23rd. I also have an email dated February 17th from Sue Gardner Smith, the manager of the Brighton Farmers Market, discussing the impact that Sunday work could have on the farmers market. So one of the things that it was referencing there is that's one more set of trade-offs.
Yes, and we've met
Sunday work may have its own disadvantages. Saturday work may have its own disadvantages. I'm thinking particularly of the members of the Chabad Shabbos and others who might need to walk, and walking that might be more difficult if the construction is going on. So I'd like to include those, and Ken, maybe we can include the items that you have into the record here as well. And also that, I guess, would necessitate a very slight change in the map that you presented before, that the short blue line part would extend then down to Greenwich. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brittany.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So it was our understanding that that was our request from the beginning, was night work from Greenwich, essentially. Basically our drill pit on the north end of our drill pit to Chelmsford. And then when I was reading through the amendment, I just, I read the address and just wrongly assumed that that was the closest to Greenwich. So that's where that mistake came through.
Sure.
As soon as I Google mapped it today, I realized that I made a mistake when I reviewed it. So that's the intent is, and that will also, similar to what you were saying about pedestrians, we are doing a little bit of sidewalk excavations right there so that we can accommodate the crossing of the road, and we will be in the sidewalk. So that would minimize, if we could get the night work there, any impacts to pedestrians, because we would be able to reopen that sidewalk during the day to our pedestrians instead of having to change their walking patterns and reroute them.
And I saw that in your email as well. And of course, that is a very attractive thing to minimize any sidewalk disruption in the area. And that was going to be my next question, was to ask about, and I know this sort of goes beyond the night work period, but as we're juggling these different times and the relative advantages and disadvantages throughout the project, throughout the area of the project, from Palmerston up at the north end down to Newton at the south end, what, if any, sidewalk disruption?
Is there a way maybe we could keep the people on the?
Yeah, everybody should be muted. What sidewalk disruption will there be, and is there a way to minimize the impact of that?
Sure. So just going back to what I just said, so that area to accommodate the crossing, I wouldn't expect to be able to reduce the amount of sidewalk work right there, just based on looking at the plans and what our consultant and Patrick have designed. And then we have just one other small area for our tie-in that's at the furthest south point of the project. So in the sidewalk, kind of near the bushes in the school. And that will be excavated just for our tie-in point. So we wouldn't expect that to be very long, and we would have to detour pedestrians around that while that excavation is open. Okay. Other than that, we're right in the drive lane, and we wouldn't do not plan any other sidewalk work or impacts.
So that's an advantage of getting the south end of the night work correct, is that will help you minimize sidewalk impact, because you plan to put gravel and plates in as needed to allow the sidewalk to be walkable during the day.
Yes.
Great. Okay. I saw Heather Coyne's hand up earlier, but now I don't. Oh, there you are, Heather.
Yeah.
I'm looking all around and you're right in front of me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to say I'm sure there's been some miscommunications, but I have to say, after hearing what I believe Mr. Gordon said, really disappointed, because I when I spoke, I believe it was with Stacy about this originally, about my concerns about the night noise, I was told this is a requirement from the state. period. That's what I was told. Like the state is requiring that we do this, the night work, I mean. And I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, that was why I was like, okay, well, can we at least do something to avoid school hours? And now maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I think I'm hearing there might be some night work in November as well, unless I misunderstood again. So then there's that piece. And then now I'm hearing about emails saying people can suck it up and wear foam earplugs. And I'm like, okay, well, so I understand the idea of inconveniencing a small subgroup to help the larger community. But what I think the flip side of that is like damaging a subgroup to inconvenience the larger community less, because that's really what it amounts to, is when, you know, tell people, you know, all right, you're not going to get good sleep for 6 weeks. So that everybody else can have a little bit less inconvenience. To me, that's just gross in my mind. And that's not working with the community. That's not being transparent. And, you know, however it ends up, and I'll deal with it, but I'm just really kind of disappointed. So that's just my rest of my 2 cents.
If I could respond to that just really quickly is, when we first had those conversations with you, kind of like I had said to Ken, we did understand that it was going to be a requirement of receiving the permit to work at night. And so that's when that response came in from you. As we've had these conversations, you know, with the board and with residents and getting the concerns, and I became more concerned with not getting this variance. I went back to the county just on the 9th of this month. So, you know, right before our public meeting, and asked what the possibility would be if we didn't get this variance of doing work during the day. And that's when we got that less than politically correct, I guess, email response from the county saying those things that you mentioned. And I think that that's why it wasn't really admitted into evidence, but or, you know, admitted into this as a document, because it's not very professional necessarily.
Yeah.
But that is the response that we got. And so they did say that they would be able to work with us. It would just be, you know, significantly reduced work hours. And so that was just on the back burner in case this didn't get approved.
I appreciate that. Again, I think people are willing to say, yeah, okay, we'll be annoyed for whatever, you know, but when you're talking about, you know, doing real construction work with what I was told would be involved in a residential area, because we talk about it, well, it's the business area. There is no distinct and separate business area in Brighton. That's not how Brighton is built. It's all residential, really, when you look at it. And so saying, well, it's, you know, a couple blocks up the road, that doesn't work in this town. So what, you know, it's just disappointing, I just have to say. And I really hope that the town reconsiders this carefully, and, you know, it just doesn't make a quick decision tonight about this, because this is just, after hearing that's just wrong. And I don't think they should grant this. Again, that's just my voice, but yeah, all right, I'll stop now. Thanks.
We've had 1 or 2 people come into the room while we have been discussing this in the public hearing. So I'll ask again whether there is anybody here that would like to address the board on this public hearing concerning the South Winton Road gas project and the proposed amendment to the noise control law.
Hey, Will. I'd like to say,
Dylan, I see your first name, but if you could please state your name, because this is a public hearing, if you could give us your full name and address for the record, please.
Oh, this is Dylan Matthews.
And your
my
address, please,
main
Dylan?
concern is
Dylan,
to keep
can I
the
get
noise
your address?
complaints down. I think we should just send all the fucking foreign people.
Shut him off, please. We'll continue. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Ken, we know we've made what is geographically a pretty small change in the delineation of the night work area, and it is one that I understand is not inconsistent with what the team here intended and thought the area was going to be. So I'll ask you first. Well, let me ask. I haven't heard anything that compels us to act tonight. We've got some unanswered questions, and frankly, some that I didn't expect would be unanswered. I knew there were going to be some issues, particularly the staging. Frankly, issues like that, I'm hoping, since it sounds like the actual bid award is working through the process, it might be possible to get some more information between now and another, the next town board meeting in 2 weeks. But then we also have this this concern with the actual position of the DOT, and frankly, what is a very disappointing response. So my inclination right now is not to take action tonight. So then my follow-up question is, should we close, if the rest of the board concurs, should we simply close the hearing? Should we hold the hearing open until the next meeting? Or given the change, is it your belief that we should close the public hearing, renotice the public hearing, and hold another technically separate public hearing in 2 weeks?
I think either is lawfully permitted. The first option would look like a tabling motion for tabling this matter to a future town board meeting. As you know, a tabling motion takes priority, is not debatable as long as it receives a second. The second option, you could close the public hearing, and if you close the public hearing, it would seem to me that you need to take action then tonight to do something. Maybe it's tabling, but then you're tabling the same proposal and not providing an opportunity for a future public hearing. Or maybe it's voting down the proposed amendment tonight for a new noise ordinance amendment to be proposed for a later meeting, which could then be noticed for a new public hearing. So I think that's really what your two options are, is tabling it, leaving the public hearing open, or closing the public hearing and voting this down, and then we'll start from scratch.
I guess it would be my preference to use the first option, to keep the public hearing open. I do appreciate your team having worked with staff, worked on the community meeting, taking the time to come in here. So I don't want to give this, the sense that we have to go back to ground zero. But we do have some fairly significant unanswered questions that I would like to think that with additional information and time, hopefully only 2 weeks worth, that we can get resolved. So we'll have a much more, I'm going to do it again, I must be very punny tonight, a more concrete plan that that will answer some of these questions. So I guess that would be my preference, but I don't want to. I do want to first see whether there is anybody else that is here that would like to address the board. I mean, to address this public hearing.
Or any comments by town board
Or any
members that
comments
they-
by board members or staff, absolutely.
Part of the public hearing record.
I guess, sorry, I know I'm
No, that's all right.
representing RG&E, but
If
my
you just
question-
state your name just so that the stenographer has that, please.
I am Patrick Conley. I am an employee of DDS and represent RG&E as the engineer on for this project. My question is really, what would we need to 2 weeks to the board in order to be able to get approval? And I want to iron out as well whether or not the whole request versus requirement from the state. Either way, we're at this point where we need to assess which is going to be the better approach for getting through this intersection. We do believe it is night work. Whether or not that's going to be an issue in the next meeting, because at this point, I don't know that we're going to have anybody stepping up to bat to say that it is officially a requirement, but it is a strong recommendation. And so long as that does not deter a decision going forward, to make sure that we're able to eventually get approval, so long as we provide the information you need.
I can answer, from my perspective, what I think I'm hearing is that there will be a sort of a primary period of night work.
Correct.
And that period of time can be, it seems, timed to commence after exams and graduation.
Yes.
And then staged so that the work a little bit farther south that is immediately adjacent to the school can also be done. That, again, that primary work, the work that you're really doing on the pipe itself, all before school comes back into session. And then to have what I think would be short mill and fill times, when perhaps a night or maybe 2 nights at the most, I would think, would do the milling and filling within that area.
That's roughly
Am I getting it? Am I getting it right?
There's just one more. It's we do need to connect up the services. So yeah. So it's really 3 separate points where we need to set up to do that. The 2 for services and milling resurfacing are small. And yes, you are right. We are 100% planning to try to do as much of this work as we can while school is out of session. It's just one of those things, working with construction, definitely working with construction underground. I don't know that there is a guarantee that we can provide on that.
And then I guess what I'm anticipating then is that during the next 2 weeks, we'll continue to have conversation, trying to, get those time periods nailed down a little bit closer. Again, if what I heard is this notion that there, an apparent bidder, if some of the questions, for example, like, will the staging be remote? If those points can be ironed out with the apparent bidder between now and 2 weeks from now, that will help give us the information we can need to really make the balance of hardships.
So I understand your concerns, but unfortunately, well, it doesn't work like public, where in public there is an apparent low bidder and bids are open publicly. They're not here and we don't have access to that information. And procurement is not allowed to share that with me or anybody else until after the board of directors approval, which isn't anticipated until at least the week of the March 14th, which would miss the next meeting.
Would that be the case with a mutually agreed upon confidentiality agreement?
I think
You know,
so.
obviously, I'm not looking for the name.
Supervisor, before we get this too complicated, there is nothing that prohibits the board from tabling this and taking it up at its March 23rd meeting. So I understand the idea of trying to get this done quickly, but if we don't have all the information for the board to make a decision, then it would be prudent to wait until we do have all the information to make that decision and then take it off the table when we have all that information. That might not be until the March 23rd meeting because RG&E does not anticipate retaining their contractor until mid-March, and that's okay.
And then what I guess would be suggesting in that context would be, you know, maybe then at that point those conversations are had so that we really are in a position then to know what the timing requirement. But I guess part of my problem is that I know this is a little bit of a chicken and egg. It's hard for you to nail down that contract. You don't know whether you're talking night work or day work or weekend work, and
right.
So that's why I guess I can't help but wonder whether there's some way with, you know, if needs be with a confidentiality agreement or something. I don't want to make this any harder than it is, but this is the very heart of the community, and the impacts, no matter how narrowly we circumscribe them, are going to be significant on residences. And I just want to make sure that to the greatest extent possible, we can minimize the timeframes and let people know what to expect as soon as possible, with the understanding, and I know full well, if you get a tropical storm that comes up the coast and drops a lot of rain, and we know how often that happens in the fall around here, everybody's best efforts might have to get shaken up. I'm
Supervisor,
just trying to, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I know that Council Member Werner has had his hand for a bit.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, Chris. Oh, you're muted. Chris, you're muted.
Try again, Chris.
There you are.
There we go. Okay, there was a restriction. I'm sorry. And I do apologize to the extent that any of my questions might have been handled or discussed just previously. I have very limited device access here in Salt Lake City. As you know, I'm on vacation. But what I believe you're trying to focus on, Bill, is what exactly are the timeframes for the night work? They've talked about having it from 7 at night till 5 in the morning, which obviously is very extreme. Is there a way to limit it, particularly during the summer hours where we have daylight savings time and it's daylight through 9 o'clock? Is it possible we could do it anything extensively during that time frame from 7 till 9:30? Also, what sort of night work is anticipated? Is it going to be heavy equipment? Is it going to be blasting? I don't think so. Not with a gas main, obviously, but what exactly can we do there? But also, we've got an upcoming public committee meeting. I believe, will it be next week or the week after?
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
March 1st. It's March 1st, so it's next week.
It's just next week, Tuesday, I believe. Is this something that we can discuss there at greater length in terms of what the options might be and the limitations on the night work? that might be had.
I'm not sure we're going to have enough new information by then to really be able to do that. The proposed local law itself does discuss the types of noisy work that could be required. I mean, you know, sawing, jackhammering, heavy trucks. So I don't see blasting. I didn't see blasting, but still, what would certainly be considered to be heavy construction work.
But is there an ability to, when we really get down to what exactly the nature of the work is going to be, will it really need jackhammering? Obviously, that would be extremely disruptive. In terms of the lighting on this, how broad will that go up in such? Because this is a gas main. It is not an overly large pipe. I'm not sure how deep it is, but will it be largely handwork around a gas pipe? I really don't know. If it's going to be just backhoes, small backhoes, or how large is the excavation going to be? But can it be trimmed down to a point that it has minimal disruption? This is a residential neighborhood that adjoins this project.
So to answer just a few of those questions, our excavation amount or, width is minimized to the extent possible. So on average, we expect 4 feet so that we can get sand padding around our 16-inch gas main. And then the depth, with needing to maintain at least 4 feet of cover underneath the roadway, we're looking at about 6 feet to the bottom. Not mostly handwork, it is mostly done with equipment. So we follow dig safe practices. So, exposing any utilities by hand, but then you can, as long as you continue to expose that, you can use your equipment. So that's generally how it's constructed. And then we saw cut even in square edges on the asphalt and remove that with equipment, and then load it into dump trucks to then take it off site. So those would be the main sources of noises, the saw cutting, the equipment. And then there's some other ancillary, noises that aren't as loud as such as welding and, prefab and stuff like that, but definitely not to the extent of noise caused by the saw cutting.
Can the work be staged to an extent and the noisier work be done during the daytime with the lighter work being done at night? The welding as an example, that doesn't make much noise.
So the way it works is they expose the area and then people much smarter than me, welders, come up with the angles and then they go in and fabricate it. So especially at the crossing, so what I would be worried about, right, is they're shifting lanes, so that's going to make massive impacts when we're actually doing the removal with all of our equipment to traffic during the day. We haven't thought to discuss the option with the county or the state of doing mixed work, if you will. But again, that would increase the time probably for both. It would increase the amount of time needed to day work and those traffic impacts. And then it would also extend our night work because we would have to set up a different type of traffic control operation to re-access those holes and weld those pieces of pipe into those holes that were exposed earlier in the day. So, longer inconvenience to more people, impacting day travelers and residences at night.
Well, Bill, I agree that, and Ken as well, I believe that tabling it make sense for the time being, because it just seems that there might be some accommodations that can be made, some mitigation can be made in terms of how the work is approached. The idea that they're going to have jackhammers and heavy equipment operating all night long, right through the night, Winton Road, with the residences so close by. And I'm not speaking because I live on Palmerston. I live enough down Palmerston. It's not going to be intrusive. I'm sure I could hear it if I wanted to listen for it, but this will be summertime, and this is things are going to be open. But I don't think it's the normal construction scenario here.
That's and of course that's why they are here seeking the amendment, the temporary amendment to the law, because it's not the norm. Our norm is that most construction work can be done during those hours that are in our law right now. What we're going to have to evaluate is the relative merits of allowing some period of time to be done at night versus the impacts to the community, again, taking into account the impact, the overall impact on the project and all the other factors we've been discussing. So it is a challenge. If I could just ask one more question, because it's actually a follow-on to a meeting that I had earlier today with Greenlight. And they are likely going to be doing work in some of the adjacent neighborhoods to Winton Road. We made them aware today of this project, and they expressed an interest in reaching out to the company to see if there was any possibility of coordinating work while the trenches is open. So is that something that you're at least going to be willing to talk to them and see if there's some accommodation that can be made?
Yeah, if they reach out to us, we do joint trench operations with other utilities all the time. So, if our schedules aligned and if they had availability to do their work, there's a number of factors,
Sure.
But it's definitely not something that would be an instant no and off the table.
Great, thank you. That's all I can ask. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board during this public hearing?
Supervisor, if I could recommend that you ask them to use the raise hand function. There have been some people added to the meeting.
I'm just telling you now, I'm not going to allow anybody to speak without going on video and using your real name. Hearing none, can I have a motion to table this public hearing?
Bill, I'm table this public hearing until our next board meeting.
Well, I want to just start. I wanted to table this public hearing, and I believe that's all we need to say. It can be taken off the table at the next meeting if we've got the information, or in 2 meetings. So I'm going to ask for a motion to table this public hearing at this time.
So moved, Bill.
Thanks, Chris. Is there a second?
Second, Christine.
Robin.
Thank you, Christine. Is there, and the motion to table is not one that can be discussed or amended. So Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio. Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye.
And actually, I wasn't able to unmute myself, but I'll let what you heard. Aye.
We saw your hand at least. Patrick, Stacy, Brittany, I know Stephanie Rankin has been on the call as well. I appreciate all of you hanging with us through what has been a pretty long night. I look forward to some more information sharing so that we can, going forward, determine the best way to do this project, offsetting the impact to the community and the needs of getting a project done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
So
for your
then-
time and your
Oh,
consideration.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you. If there is nothing more, then I'll move to the next item, which is a public hearing to consider proposed tree removals at 190 Antlers Drive, 39 and 105 Sunset Drive, and 898 Clover Street. And I'll ask the clerk, has the legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor, the notice for this was also in the January 26th edition of the Daily Record.
Thank you. And communication was sent to the adjoining property owners as required by law?
That is correct, Supervisor.
Thanks, Mike. Then I declare this public hearing to be open. You have a lot of material, a lot of pictures, a lot of reports relating to these trees. Maybe, Mike, you can very quickly describe what's at play here.
Sure, Supervisor. You know, like with all the trees, we'll go out and do an evaluation. We found that these 6 trees needed to be removed. There'll be a replacement tree put in for all but one site. The trees are all, the diameters are all greater than 30 inches, so they are considered a significant tree. And according to our tree law, that requires that we have a public hearing and take public comment. I know the board did receive, I think I have received 3 emails that I forwarded off to Bridget. I think all were agreeable with the removals. I know there was one email where the resident requested some special scheduling of the tree, something we can accommodate. Outside of that, we're just looking for public comment tonight on the removal of those trees.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mike. Is there anybody here to address the board on these proposed tree removals? And again, I am not going to call anybody unless I see you. Is there anybody on the board with any comments you'd like to make during this public hearing? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. Robin, if you would make the motion, please.
Sorry, took a little while to unmute. On the matter regarding the approval of proposed tree removals at 190 Antlers Drive, 105 and 39 Sunset Drive, and 898 Clover Street, I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the town attorney.
Second.
Thank you both. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Can I have a motion to receive and file the communications, please?
So moved. Christine.
Second, Jason.
Mike, you got 2 good people retiring. Talk to us a little bit about Tim Springer and Kathy Infantino.
Well, I'll start with Kathy. She's first on the list. She's been with the town 21 years. She's been the voice of the town for most of those 21 years. She's answered the phones, responded to residents, done a great job. She's also pretty much kept the office running over there, running smooth. She's handled all our HR issues, all the operational issues over there. Will be missed. Will be missed very much. So we've talked about our replacement procedure. So we're in the process of doing that. But Kathy, she did a fantastic job. I'm hoping she enjoys her retirement. Little envious, but she will truly be missed. Tim Springer, I think he's been there 34 years. Probably one of the has the most longevity of anybody there for a long period of time. So Tim's done everything. His current position is a sign shop. So he's the one who makes all the signs, takes care of all the barricades, makes the signs for our events, things of that nature. It's got just so much knowledge and background that it will all be missed. He's been telling old stories of the old timers lately, so it's brings a laugh to everybody's face. So gonna miss them both. Great employees. I just hope they enjoy their retirement.
Yeah, Kathy's been the voice and Tim has been the sign of the town.
Exactly.
And we will miss them both. I had a chance to talk to Tim when he stopped by last week, and I do. I hope they both enjoy this. Speaking of some really, actually much nicer news, because we are going to miss them. But I want to read this really, really thoughtful letter by Jay, that's an initial, Freeman. And I'm just going to read the note because, and this was someone, with their tax bill. So put it in the context. Hello to every one of you that, I think it says, teams and departments in the town of Brighton. Thank you, each of you, for all the work, all you do in your underlying daily work that results in how nice of a community Brighton is. We are as ethical, compassionate, giving, and kind place, not to mention beautiful. Thank you very much for all of those kind words. We do have a whole bunch of people, each one of our buildings, each one of our departments that do work very hard. And I hope all of us department heads and officials can share it with our employees, because they do such great work. Seen those red trucks around a lot these last couple days with all the rain, and the sewer department is out like crazy, but every single one of our departments does this great work. So thank you. The next letter is a communication from the interim president and CEO, Justin Driscoll, and the director, Brian Stratton, of the New York Canal Corporation, acknowledging receipt of a letter that I previously submitted, as did the supervisor of Pittsford and Parrington, and a number of the activists that have worked to try to stop the clear cutting of the canal. I appreciate the fact that the Canal Corporation responded to the supervisors. Actually, as of the last I had heard, they hadn't written back to the individual residents that wrote them. But they discuss their process and risk values and everything else. And they say where the risks are high, we have no choice but to protect public safety. Where the risks are low, the Power Authority and the Canal Corporation support and intend to implement programs which support diverse habitats. But even where the risks, as they determine them, are low, what they're talking about is clear cutting the darn thing and then maybe letting a little bit of it grow back. As you've heard us say many times, never in the history of the Erie Canal has there been a breach of the canal embankments caused by nature, caused by plants. There have been several, including out by the Great Embankment area near the Pittsford-Parrington town line, that were in fact caused by human activity. So I am at a loss to determine why the Canal Corporation and the Power Authority continue to seem dead set on increasing human activity, doing a whole bunch of construction work, instead of letting the beauty of the canal continue. Thank you to them both for sending this letter, but it certainly hasn't changed my mind about this project. And I know none of my colleagues as supervisors, it hasn't changed their minds either. Finally, we received communication from Comp Alliance, our workers' compensation carrier, with a member loyalty award of nearly $3,000, which we appreciate. And communication from Jennifer Cesarino, Monroe County Controller, advising us that our sales tax distribution for the fourth quarter was nearly 1.5 million, up nearly 400,000 from the same period last year. And I know that was good news. And Paula, anything you want to share on that collection? You're speechless. You're so, well, there we go.
Yeah, the hostess with the mostest had me blocked. So yes. Yeah. Actually the sales tax was another traditionally that December period going into the new year's always been high anyway with the holiday shopping and things like that. But this was even higher than we expected. And it was a pleasant surprise from going from the COVID year to 2021. We did well with sales tax. So it was a welcome surprise. So great job, everybody who shops in Monroe County. Keep it up.
We have a motion to receive and file all of those items of communication. Any further comments on any of them? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePoncio.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Committee reports. Community Services Committee. Robin?
Thanks, Bill. The Community Services Committee met on Wednesday, February 16th. And among the items we discussed were under continuing business, park issues. Parks and trail maintenance is ongoing. We're working with Zoo Trail Camps program to bring focus on urban wildlife in Corbett's Glen and on the Brickyard Trail, with the potential that the cooperation may evolve into future programs. There was also a discussion of plans to restrict the July 4th road race to Meridian due to RG&E construction on South Winton, or to explore alternate routes. Under items of recreation, the program registration is ongoing. Spring events planning is underway, including the Brickyard Bunny Trail event programming that is expected to return this year. Summer planning is also underway, including the concert series, day camp, and staff recruitment for all of those programs. Our feasibility study work also continues. We expect the next public meeting in a month or so. And also our Grab and Go senior meal program. We're developing partnerships with senior living communities to offset costs and creatively partner to host a lunch program on location at various sites in the community. We're reviewing our masking protocols for town programs and for rental facilities as state directives evolve, and also evaluating the potential impact of the RG&E construction project on the summer market. An update to our winter farmers market. The next phase of planning is underway, and we expect to go out to bid in early summer. Also working towards synergy between the feasibility study feedback and the winter market project. As we heard, the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board gave us a brief overview of the history and process. to create the idea plan, and we had a presentation from the idea board of a draft final report. And I again have to commend the idea board and our consultants, Gwen Inc., on all of the many hours of extremely hard work that went into the process, and also having the flexibility during a pandemic to turn out such excellent work product. Just kudos to all involved. An update to our community choice and community solar aggregation programs. Obviously, we have ongoing billing issues with RG&E and Source Power related to the community solar aggregation, and we're working to get resolution for residents. The CCA, on the other hand, has worked very well. Obviously, community solar is experiencing significant challenges, and RG&E is working to rebuild to remove the adjustments to correct the issue. And as Bill mentioned earlier, there's a discussion of the parameters for providing true resolution of those issues to our affected residents. An update to our clean energies community priority actions. Our climate action plan consultant, Barton and Lujudas, issued a survey to the Sustainability Oversight Committee and the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board committee that is helping with the climate action plan, to directors and staff, and to compile a list of community contacts for targeted outreach, engagement, and input on the climate action plan. A draft community engagement plan has also been provided, and the Sustainability Oversight Committee and Idea Board are reviewing this plan. And that review happened by the SOC last night. We had a little bit of an update on Clean Sweep. We'll be meeting with Brighton Central School District to coordinate busing for the students, and registration through the recreation portal will be set up and open to the community in March. Had a brief discussion on National Trails Day, which will be June 4th, 2022. We're trying to develop a Trails Passport program with the Parks and Recreation Citizen Advisory Board to highlight the trails in our town, and we're hoping to coordinate that kickoff with National Trails Day. Our park superintendent, Matt Beeman, is working to have a map created showing all of our trails and parks in the town of Brighton on one document, which is something that we currently do not have, but would be very helpful in coordinating an event. And then we did have an update to the Hopper bike programs. Christine, did you want to weigh in there?
Sure, only to add that I did meet with Hopper just after the Community Services Committee. Hopper is focused on 5 stations in Brighton for phase 2, the second year of Hopper in the Rochester region. The station at 12 Corners will return. The planned station at Town Hall that did not manifest last year due to supply chain issues is ready to be deployed this year. And then we are zeroing in on 3 more sites throughout town that will take advantage of our trail system or adjacency to the canal or adjacency to the primary bus routes in town. So we'll have a little more on that as Hopper works with the property owners where those additional 3 locations may land. And the planned launch in the entire region is April 1st, no fooling. So more to come.
Thank you so much for that, Christine. In terms of our upcoming events, we have our DEA National Pharmaceutical Take Back event that will be on Saturday, April 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Brighton Town Hall Public Safety Wing at 2300 Elmwood Avenue. We have the return of Brighton Clean Sweep, which will be on Saturday, May 7th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and it will kick off at Brighton Town Hall, 2300 Elmwood Avenue. And also the semi-annual electronics recycling and secure document shredding event will take place for the spring on Sunday, May 15th from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And as always, it will be in the Brighton Highway Department parking lot, 1940 Elmwood Avenue. The next meeting of the Community Services Committee will be on Wednesday, March 16th at 9:30 a.m. at the Brookside Recreation Center. As always, members of the public are invited to attend. We are still observing masking protocol and at this point, so please do call the Recreation Department if you have any questions or if you do intend to attend the event so that we can make sure everybody is safely accommodated.
Thank you, Robin. Finance and Administrative Services, Jason?
Yes, the Finance and Administrative Services Committee met last Tuesday, February 15th. Each of the items that were discussed in committee appear on tonight's agenda and will be discussed and voted on and presented in further detail. Our next meeting will be held next Tuesday, March 1st. We meet at 3:30 in the afternoon in the main auditorium at Town Hall, and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks, Jason. Chris, Public Safety?
Very sorry for my technical difficulties.
All right, we're glad you're here.
Off a cell phone here. The Public Safety Services Committee has not met since our last board meeting. The next board meeting will be on March the 8th at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the public is invited to attend.
Thank you, Chris. And Public Works, Christine?
Similarly, Public Works has not met since the last board meeting. Next meeting is March 1st at 9 a.m. If members of the community have any Public Works matters that they'd like to have addressed in committee, they can reach out to any member of the committee. They can find that information, the contact information at townofbrighton.org/publicworkscommittee. And while we have the moment, I do want to praise the Public Works team for their responses this past week with all of the water issues throughout low-lying clay-soiled Brighton. I don't know about other members on the board and in the general public, but my neighborhood is as low as the former bed of the Erie Canal, with the perfect soil for a canal, but not so great for a dry basement. And with the rapid thaw last week and the frozen ground, we had a lot of wet basements on this end of town. And I know there were wet basements elsewhere, and the town team was phenomenal in getting out and assisting people. Even today, I noted the town sewer department vehicles in our neighborhood and checking in with neighbors who had concerns. So kudos to that team. You guys never rest. And that is all, unless Mike, you wanted to add anything about any matters related to the water issues recently in sewer.
Nothing really to add, Christine. Thank you for your kudos. The guys do work really hard. And you and I talked briefly how troubling a wet basement can be. So
Yes.
if there are any issues and people are concerned, please call the sewer department or call the highway department, and we'll send someone out to take a look at it.
Great. Thank you. That's
Thanks,
all. We'll see
Mike.
folks on March 1st.
That's so important. You know, people when they, wake up to that wet basement or come home from work to that wet basement, don't always know, where they should make that first call. And it's a great thing that the sewer department makes themselves available that way.
And I'm sorry, I did say that I was done, but I do want to add and emphasize that the wet basement issues are primarily a matter of geology and climate, not an aging sewer system, not an poor maintenance on the system. So while it is really frustrating to have the have that west basement and the damage, The town works hard, the town maintains our sewers well and responds when necessary. But we live where we live and we've got to adjust for it.
Thanks, Christine. We'll move on to new business now and start with Jason reading and approval of the claims.
Yes, Bill, earlier today, I reviewed claims totaling $8,049,299.47. That's a high number because we're in the middle of, we're toward the end of tax collection season. We collect on behalf of other taxing authorities and then remit payments to them. So our notable claims include to the Brighton Fire District, the amount of $5,858,076.04. Also to the Henrietta Fire District, the amount of $1,358,515.46. Also to the Depository Trust Company in the amount of $362,150, representing payment of 2016 Parkland acquisition bonds. And of that amount, $355,000 was principal. Also to NOCO Energy Group, in the amount of $23,817.87, representing purchase of diesel fuel for January 2022. And finally, to Baker and Taylor Inc., the amount of $8,671.66, representing payment for adult and children's books and multimedia supplies for the Brighton Memorial Library. The claims all appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second, Robin.
Any discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Robin, why don't you take the next one, please?
Certainly, the next item seeks to accept a grant from the Justice Court Administration Program in the amount of $11,210.98 to refurbish courtroom walls and purchase a secured cell phone and key locker and amend the 2022 budget to reflect said grant. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the town attorney.
Second, Chris.
And this is the second such grant. I believe they originally applied for one combined grant and the JCAP program instead spread it out over a couple of years, but they were also able to add that cell phone locker to it. So we appreciate their assistance in keeping our courts running. Further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Chris, why don't you do, actually, I'll call on you separately, but if you do the next one, please, and then I'll have you do the one after that too.
Yes, Bill. The next item is to authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with Austin Spencer Collision for the provision of vehicle collision repair services for a term of 1 year from January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2022, the option of 3 one-year renewals. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second. Thank you, Jason. Discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Next one again, Chris.
Yes, Bill. The next item is to authorize a budget transfer in the amount of $3,500 annually for 3 years from the police department forfeited property account for an agreement with Verizon Connect for the purchase and service of a GPS fleet management program for a total amount not to exceed $10,500. I move that we adopt the resolution for us.
Second, please.
Second, Jason.
Our two departments with our fleets each are participating in, proposing to participate in this program. The police department and the highway sewer department. The funding streams are a little bit different and they're two separate resolutions, but since we got the first one on the floor, I'll turn to you, Chief, for just a little description of what this is going to do for you.
Sure, we hit the nail on the head, and I want to give thanks to Mike Guyan, who really led the project. He knew that we were looking into doing this. So this is basically, it's going to help streamline our service agreements. And instead of keeping track of all of the oil changes, all the maintenance of these vehicles, this program is going to allow us to have a dashboard. We'll be able to access it on the fly. Also, we'll be able to locate where the vehicles are at all times. As you know, especially attending public safety committee meetings, we hear very often that they never see a Brighton police car. With this program, it'll help us to be able to track the police car, and we'll be able to know when they're in a neighborhood. And as you said, this is budget neutral because I'm using our asset forfeiture account.
Thanks, Chief. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Christine.
Yes. The next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with Verizon Connect for the purchase and service of a GPS fleet management program for an amount not to exceed $6,640.20, and authorize the Finance Department to amend the budget of the Department of Public Works as necessary for said contract. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second, Robin.
Mike, what's this going to do for your side of the shop?
Well, the chief is too kind to give me any credit for this. We worked with his department, and honestly, they helped us make the decision to go with Verizon. What it'll allow us to do is better manage our fleet. Everything the chief said, but it also allows us to better manage our fleet. We'll keep statistics on how the machinery is running, when it needs to be maintained. Also manage our workforce. We'll be able to know where our fleet is at all the time. If we need to rearrange our fleet, we'll know which trucks are closer to which problem. We'll be able to monitor how the progress we're making, particularly in leaf and garden debris pickup. Also plowing. We'll know where our plow trucks are at and if there's any problems. And then I think the most important thing, it'll allow us to better respond to our residents. Honestly, we'll know where our trucks are at. If there's an issue, we'll know what truck to call to get there the quickest. So it's a great program. We've been trying to do this for a while. I think it's gonna pay dividends. It's gonna help us with fuel efficiencies, and it's gonna help us better make our fleets that much more efficient.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Christine, why don't you do the next one too?
Sure. The next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with Birchcrest Tree and Landscape for rental of a bucket truck with a qualified operator for an amount not to exceed $56,160 for calendar year 2022. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second, Chris.
Thank you. We've done this for a number of years. Mike, do we anticipate going forward less of a need in 23?
Yeah, absolutely, Supervisor. The one thing we have done with the 2022 budget was include the purchase of a tow behind bucket truck, which will allow us to significantly reduce this effort next year. But until then, we need to get the tree trimming done. So, but yeah, I think the bucket truck's going to be a great addition to our fleet.
And we do. I know we've talked about it a lot. There are just so many trees, and between windstorms and ash borer and everything that's going on, it's important to maintain our trees, but unfortunately sometimes we have to do some pretty heavy duty work on them. So okay, motion and second on that. Further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Robin, the next matter, please.
Certainly, the next matter seeks to authorize the reappropriation of $11,200 from the 2021 amended budget to the 2022 budget for pre-approved restoration work on the homemakers entrance piers. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the town attorney.
Second, Christine.
Mike?
Yeah, we've been trying to get the, I call them the entry monuments, the piers that they're referenced in the letter. I've been trying to get the metal decorative pieces refinished, refurbished. We entered into a contract with Armstrong Fabricators for last year. Due to a number of unforeseen issues, we never issued the PO. We never got started. We want to get started this year. So we're just trying to move the money from last year to this year.
Thank you. Sounds good. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt, Councilmember Werner. All right, sorry,
That's all right.
he blinked out and I lost him. Sorry, Councilmember Werner. All right, and
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks to authorize transfers and appropriations for 2021 budget year-end processing and reappropriate unspent committed project funds to the 2022 budget. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the town attorney.
Second, Robin.
I could try to explain this, but the finance director would do a much better job. Paula, if you would.
Housekeeping, see? Okay, so the list that I presented in FAST was a draft, so I've updated this, and these transfers in the first section of this represent transfers within each of the budgets to cover overages and the different classifications. It's not every account we cover, just within the classifications where we may have ran a little bit short, and we did do some projects that were unplanned in the 21 budget that we knew we'd have some funds in other areas. The reappropriations are unfinished projects that were not completed or even started in 2021, many of which have grant funding tied to them. So we want to roll those funds into the 2022 budget. So we'll reappropriate them in the 2022 budget.
Thanks, Paula. In case anybody ever wonders, does the finance department just sort of round numbers? I mean, we have literally a $1 transfer, $25 transfer, $7. I mean, you really cover all of this.
We do, and by law, yep, by law, we have to, as everybody knows, when we adopt our budget in the fall each year, we adopt that budget by classification. So even if one of those classes goes over by 1 penny, we have to transfer money in there because we're not allowed to go over budget. So, and then the reason, of course, we like to transfer even dollar numbers is because of when we look back at the budget and we're trying to figure out what we were doing. If I know it's an even number, I know it's something that we changed and amended the budget by those numbers. So we don't like to work in pennies. The actuals are always in pennies, but our budget numbers tend to be in dollars because they're easier to identify.
Sure.
Yep.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion about any of these? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Matters of the supervisor, just real quickly, I think Robin brought up the senior grab and go lunch program. I was out there today. That's a weekly program for our seniors. And Assemblywoman Sarah Clark was also there because she had provided masks and test kits for our seniors. So we were able to put masks and test kits in with the lunches. And as always, it's great. You know, you really see how much everybody appreciates that. We so wish we could get everybody together, but watching Emily and Becky interact with the folks, even though they're in their car, it's wonderful. And also seeing the number of people in the program who are delivering those to their friends in the program. One person will come and pick up 4 lunches so they can drop them off to the 3 others who just aren't up to getting out of the house and doing the drive-through. So thank you, Assemblymember Clark, for procuring those for our seniors. And thank you, as always, to our Senior Director, Emily Kelsey, and the whole Recreation Department for a great program. Matters of the Town Attorney.
Thank you, Bill. I just want to extend my thanks to you and the rest of the members of the town board for providing me the opportunity once again to attend the Association of Towns annual conference, this time remotely. I spent the last 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, in continuing legal education classes, picked up some good information and some good refreshers on some other topics. I'm happy to share that with board members if they're interested, but just wanted to say thank you for supporting me in that way. That's all I have.
You're welcome. Matters of the Town Clerk.
Just briefly, second installment, property taxes due Monday.
Thank you, Dan. It was getting a little busier today.
I think people are not looking at the snow coming in and getting ahead of that, I think.
Yeah, probably so. Matters of the Town Board. Then can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Manley.
Aye. Next town board meeting will be Wednesday, March 9th. That meeting will again be held remotely. Hope to see you there. Thank you to everybody that participated tonight. Have a great evening, everybody.
Good night, folks.